This is Carlos talking Dodgers. And he says, hey, looks like the Dodgers want to win the West today and celebrate by jumping in the pool like they did a few years back. Oh, wait, I forgot our bullpen.
Well, they got problems, but, they've got solutions, they think. I'll be intrigued. When we come back Monday and we do Monday's podcast at 1:30, they will have, at that point, probably turn their rosters in for postseason. I want to know which relief pitchers they're going to leave off, because it's obvious they can't trust hardly any of these guys at all. And, the other thing is you can use Kershaw one time out of the pen, but he's not going to use him on back-to-back days. And Sasaki's never walked down this road before with high leverage. And is he able to throw back-to-back days? Now, he did at Oklahoma City over the final 2 weeks of rehab. Is he going to be a trustworthy guy back-to-back days? And then you still got Vessier. What do you do with Banda? And then what do you do with Tanner Scott or these other guys? Is anybody else you could trust there? So they got I think the Dodgers have a real significant problem, unless they're going to score 9 runs per game.
Well, if Dave Roberts had to have a sit-down meeting with all of his bullpen guys and kind of challenge their manhood, then yeah, they've got an issue and it's not going away, But I remember, it was a few years ago when the Dodgers won in Arizona and they jumped in the pool. Yep. And that's fun, but I mean, that's like a major disrespect to the Diamondbacks and their fans. But the Diamondbacks they're still mathematically in it, right?
Yeah, there's 3 teams fighting for the last wild card spot. The Mets have got the thing jammed into reverse gear going backwards.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, which had a chance to play Pittsburgh and maybe sweep them and put themselves in, got beat in back-to-back games. People in Cincinnati are furious. Not just because of the Bengals. Now they're furious at the Reds for choking us away. And you got Arizona, which is they're playing their guts out, having traded so many people away at the deadline.
But they got the bullpen, the Dodgers bullpen, and bit them.
Yep.
A couple of times. The snake was biting. So yeah, I mean the Dodgers, their magic number's 1 right now. So if they win 1 game or the Padres lose 1 game, it's over. There was that we could have put a thread through a needle to maybe get the Padres to win the NL West, but it was going to be hard.
Well, to me, my private concern was, geez, Padres are celebrating. Okay, you made the playoffs. Okay, I understand that. But guys, you're only 1.5 back of the Cubs at that point. Let's just dive in here and try to complete this. Get the top wild card spot, which is home field at Petco Park, which is huge. And it didn't happen. And then they partied hardy, and then Mike Schultz resting guys when they still had a chance.
But they won with that one. When the roster had all those backup guys that were playing, and Manny and Merrill were all sitting in Tatis, they won that game. And then the next game, they rolled out, most of their starters, and they lost. So I don't know. The Dodgers are going to win this thing. Sasaki, Kershaw, Sheehan, they got options in the bullpen. And, Dave Roberts has got his nerds upstairs that are probably running the numbers, and they'll have a plan.
Okay, let's move on here. Carlos, thanks for joining us. Tell your friends about what we do Mondays and Thursdays on this podcast. Next one, John.
Okay, let's talk Padres. It's a 2-parter from Matthew. He says, good afternoon, gentlemen, from Indianapolis. And then he says, from Michael. And he says, Padres have said game 1, Pivetta, game 2, Michael King, game 3, Yu Darvish, long relief, Dylan Cease.
Well, I concur. My theory is, though, game 2 is hugely important. Darvish has the world of experience. I would go Darvish with an insurance policy behind him, and then Michael King with an insurance policy behind him if we get to game 3. The Padres, we don't know how many quality innings Vasquez could give them, but he's pitched better recently. We don't know about the inconsistency of Cease. That's why he's not going to be in the rotation. But to me, more important was Darvish's experience as game 2 starter. And if he staggers, then you got somebody out of the pen. Whereas King, we had that really bad outing. Then we had a pretty decent outing. But I don't know. This is not at Petco Park. This is on the road. This is at Wrigley Field, and King's giving up home runs. And you know how the ball flies out of Wrigleyville. I don't know. You agree or disagree with me about who should start 2 and 3?
Well, you may not get to game 3, so you got to put your top 2 pitchers 1 and 2. And I'm with you. I think Darvish deserves that number 2 spot because of the experience. and you kind of wonder about King because he's young, and he was so great last year and even in the early part of this year before he got hurt. But he was sketchy, 2-3 starts ago. And you kind of wonder if that would be in the back of his mind.
And it's at Wrigleyville.
Right. And if the wind's blowing out, holy crap. And because did they hit like 4 or 5 home runs off him 2 starts ago?
4 of them.
Yeah. So, this makes sense. But are these games like 3 in a row, or is there any off day in there?
It's boom, boom, boom.
Jeez. Yeah, you definitely need like a long relief strategy because you can't have your 4 or 5, 6 pack horsemen pitching all 3 of those games.
Yeah, well, you've got a long relief strategy. Whether or not you subscribe that Vasquez has totally arrived, but he's given him more quality innings than anything. And over a 4 inning spurt, maybe Vasquez is really dominant. And I don't know what to buy about Cease because he can be so good and so dominant and strikes out guys, and then it goes away in 1 inning, and then it comes back. So, but at least he's got experience. So if you get in trouble early with the starter, at least you got Vasquez to go to and Cease to go to, and you're backed up by the gold standard bullpen. But I would start Darvish for game 2 only just based on his heritage and his expertise.
Well, there's a whole other line of argument that Randy Vasquez should be our number 1 or 2 starter. I mean, he looked really good in his last start.
I concur, but there's also a big history of pitches well in spurts and all of a sudden has a really bad inning and it's over.
It seems like that happens to all of our pitchers, doesn't it? Okay, let's keep moving here. Go to Gordon.
Thanks, Mike.
And he goes, good afternoon, Leah John. With the uncertainty of Will Smith, why not pick up Austin Barnes before the playoffs? We know his hitting is questionable. He's a great backstop. Great show as always.
Well, the only thing with Barnes has been out of baseball now for the better part of a month. He was with 2 other clubs and then promptly got released. What you really need with a guy that's coming in, you're not going to take a guy off the street who has not played. Is what's his baseball conditioning like? So that's the big issue. They do like Dalton rushing, and actually the third kid, the minor league kid, although he's not hitting, has played very well defensively. So yeah, they got a problem. But if Barnes had just been released last week, which meant he was playing and he was in game condition, maybe you'd look at that. But see, you can't add somebody from the outside now. Guy had to be on your roster or in your organization or having been on the 40-man roster by September 1st, and Barnes has been gone.
Yeah, I don't know much about the depth chart there. And they can't call Martin Maldonado, so he's not eligible. Speaking of this, I'm kind of spinning back to the Padres, because with catchers, what's your thought about the Padres bringing up Luis Campusano? I mean, do you think he could be a DH? I mean, he probably wouldn't catch, but without Ramon Laureano, they got to replace him with somebody.
Well, he's a right-handed bat. Laureano was a right-handed bat. But the problem is, even though Campusano had a great season at AAA, he had no hits in major leagues this year. None.
Yeah, I think he was up like 20 or 25 times.
28, I think it was 28 plate appearances, and a lot of strikeouts, and none.
Yeah, well, but, at least there's a chance. He's like the home run king of El Paso,
I don't think he'll be here next year. I think they'll use him as trade bait, let him go somewhere else and try to get something in return for him. Novel thought, but no, I don't see that happening.
Okay. All right. Let's keep going.
Move on.
Let's go to Greg. Lee and John, you could pick any pitcher, past or present. Who do you want to start Game 7 of the World Series? My pick, Koufax.
Koufax at his elite. Yeah, I'd say that's not a bad choice. We had this great debate amongst us. Greatest Dodger pitcher of all time. You think about that. I mean, and it's all related to Kershaw, whose career record's 222 and 96. But think of the Dodger history. Valenzuela, Don Sutton, Orel Hershiser, Koufax, Don Drysdale. I'm sure I'm missing a couple names here. Newcomb way back in the day. But
Pedro Martinez.
Yeah.
If you want to count him. But yeah. Bob Welch was pretty good there in the late 70s. He went on to the A's, if I recall.
But not for all time. I mean, Sutton had 223 wins. Kershaw's got 222. So I don't know. Game 7 World Series. Koufax at his elite. Koufax.
Well, here's a few names maybe that aren't thought of. How about Jack Morris? Because he went 10 innings at one time, and there are other guys that, they had those peak years. Remember when Carlton was super dominant with
Oh,
the
yeah.
Phillies. Now, granted, the team was crap. They weren't playing in the World Series, but there were other magical moments in baseball history, like Mark the Bird Fidrich, or some of these pitchers that appeared out of the clouds.
Flamed out though.
But they flamed out. But some of those guys, when everything was going their way, it seemed like they could get anyone out. As another example is, who was his name? He pitched for the Cubs about 10 or 15 years ago, and he struck out 25 guys.
Big flamethrower. No, you asked me too quick.
Yeah, what's that guy's name?
Big right-hander.
Yes, and I'm blanking on his name.
But there's longevity comes into greatness, not flash in the
But you
pan.
just got one day, a Game 7. Here we go. So
how come you haven't mentioned Glavine, Smoltz, or Maddox?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, definitely those
There's
guys.
so many great ones, but that's over longevity.
Yeah, or like Tim Lincecum or something. We could go down the list. But yeah, Koufax is a great pick. I don't know, Catfish Hunter, that'd be another one.
Yeah. Back in the day, Whitey Ford.
Did Nolan Ryan ever get into the World Series? He might have. Was he on the 69 Mets?
Yes.
He got into the World Series, but Ryan in his heyday would be a great Game 7 starter.
We'll just have Ryan throw against Koufax, see if anybody can hit anything.
Yeah, or maybe Dwight Gooden. Remember him?
Greg, thanks for being with us, man. Tell a friend. Hope you get some other people join us Mondays and Thursdays at 1:30. Go ahead, John.
Okay, let's go here to John. He goes, gentlemen, your Padres starting roster, closer, manager, combining 84, 98, and 25. Here's mine: Kevin Brown, Terry Kennedy, Wally Joyner, Alan Wiggins, Manny Machado, Gary Templeton, Greg Vaughn, Jackson Merrill, Tony Gwynn, Trevor Hoffman as the closer, and Bruce Bochy as the manager.
That's nice, but now if we're going to compare that, how does that compare? How does that match up with the legendary Dodger great teams that have been in the World Series? And if we're going to really reach here in terms of this topic here, John, how does that compare to all things Yankee baseball? The Mantle Maris era. I mean, when you start cherry picking, well, these teams from the illustrious Padre franchises were pretty good. Well, compare it to the teams that dominated baseball, Yankees and Dodgers, and the Padres don't look in the same stratosphere as the Yankees and the Dodgers. No.
I mean, there's only 2 Hall of Famers, plus Bochy if you count him. But I think those are logical choices. I don't know. I'd probably start a different shortstop. I mean, maybe Xander or Khalil Green, I think.
No, Khalil was only there 15 minutes.
But he was good when he was playing. And so, and then like Joyner at first base, I'd rather have Fred McGriff than Wally Joyner, but McGriff wasn't in one of these years. Kevin Brown, that'd be hard to top him. Yeah, I mean, that's a good choice right there. I like that.
That's it. I mean, it's a unique question off the top of my head, but if we're comparing greatness to the Padres, how do you compare it with the greatness of all the great Dodger teams and the Yankee teams? To me, it doesn't match.
Well, but pick any team that's only existed for 60 or so years. They're not going to have very many Hall of Famers on their all-time roster either. So, I mean, the Yankees and Dodgers, they got a lot of guys to pick from.
Okay, we move on.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Let's go here to Timer 20. Because I'm, as an Angels fan, I'm hoping the Skaggs family gets every penny of that $785 million. Then hopefully the stadium audit will make Artie finally sell the team, because 11 years of no playoffs is enough.
Franchise in disarray. Franchise has really gone through a bad time, but this is a separate entity story. This is about personal decisions that Tyler Skaggs made, and that's the sorrowful part of this, that it cost himself his own life because of his own addictions. I mean, I know a lot of those people in that organization. I'd have a hard time believing that anybody would sanction anything that happened there. I mean, this was done by a public relations director who had his own addiction, and then obviously went out and got stuff for other players. And this one player who was really addicted and had that initial addiction that came with him from the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's a terribly tragic story. I just have a hard time believing anything that Artie Moreno, and he's had some good people that are friends of mine that have worked there, that they would ever be involved in sanctioning any of this. So it's just a sad, sad commentary. Should Moreno sell the franchise? Yes, because the success has just gone away, and I don't know that they can recapture it. at all. They really need new direction. And the fact that he was going to sell it and then backed away from it, that's not good either. It's just a very complicated, but to me, it's a tragic story. And you just saying, I hope the Skaggs family wins every penny they can get. Then you're, in essence, you're telling me that Moreno's to blame for this. I don't see it that way. I don't. That just off the top of my head, my gut reaction. I deal with these players all the time in clubhouses and in Major League Baseball and the NFL, NBA, and the NHL. So I've seen all this stuff and been around it and understand it. But it's a terrible outcome.
This is tough. I mean, obviously you want justice to be done, but how do you put a price on a life? In $785 million, that's a lot of money. Is your life worth that? You could say, yeah, it is, but it's kind of an arbitrary number. It makes you wonder how they came up with that number.
Well, he's represented by one of those very outspoken lawyers in Texas.
Okay.
Rusty, I can't remember his last name. He's represented a number of big people in big money lawsuits. It just
seems like the number is probably based on some fraction of the Artie Moreno's net worth, as opposed to something objectively connected, like with Skylar Cagg's, like future earnings or something. I don't know how you pick a number like that.
But all this conversation about money and ownership, and I don't like the owner, so therefore I hope he loses I'm not sure that's necessarily fair. And for me, unless we have a bunch of other angel people who are going to stand up here, nobody's blaming Tyler Skaggs for what Tyler Skaggs got himself involved in.
Mm.
Does that fall into this conversation equation? Should it? The trial, the court cases, it's going to be steamy. It's going to be sleazy. It's going to be angry. It's going to be hurtful. It's going to be a sad 2-week trial.
But you might see Mike Trout on the stand, right? I mean, some ball players.
If he gets deposed. Well, I think there will be ball players who will be dragged into this who've already been deposed.
Interesting.
Trout is an innocent bystander only because he was in the clubhouse and only because he tried to do an intervention with the PR director and get him into rehab and even willing to pay for his own rehab. But Trout's not involved like these other players were. The guy, Matt Harvey's of the world, are actually getting pills from Eric Kay and getting stuff from Tyler Skaggs. Those guys are more deeply entwined with what happened to the Angel pitcher who died than Mike Trout, a teammate.
Interesting. Matt Harvey is an interesting name because I remember he was really good. Was it for the Mets?
Mm-hmm.
And then he got hurt and then he kind of bounced around and he was with the Angels. So he was going through his own physical woes. I don't know. I'm speculating here. Did he feel like he needed some kind of painkiller for him to get through his challenge? So I don't know. This speaks to not just this Skaggs specific issue, but all the things that ball players are dealing with injury-wise, pitchers, stress on the arm. It's all linked.
Well, I mean, obviously painkillers and things of that nature are available under prescription, but they should not be available in terms of going outside the circle. And I go back to my original comment earlier in the podcast, where the hell was the union while all this was going on? And this player had this deep a problem with an addiction that goes back as far back as 2013.
Yeah.
I mean, he was addicted to Percocet from 13 till he got to the Angels. He died in 19 from all the other things that he was taking.
Well, okay, not to excuse the behavior, but opioids are terribly addicting.
Yes.
And I've been on opioids and felt the draw of the addiction. I had to take a step back.
Well, me too. You got to have it.
Yeah. I mean, you really have to have that kind of self-awareness. But now it's so much harder to get a prescription for an opioid. I mean, the pendulum has swung the other way. There's a lot of people suffering, not just ball players, but regular people that have pain and can't get pain relief. And I think that's what drives people into these black markets. They're getting these drugs from God knows who. And in this case, stuff laced with fentanyl. I mean, you can't trust where that stuff's coming from.
I agree with you. Well, we'll try to cover it as best we can. I'll be writing on it on my website on a day-by-day basis once this trial gets started. But check my column that I wrote this morning, One Man's Opinion, because I tried to cover it from every conceivable angle there was. Okay, we move on.
Okay, let's go here to Alejandro. Is Eli a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Well, he was on it last year, did not get voted. But he's close. Again, he won multiple Super Bowl rings. And that really seems to be a prerequisite for a quarterback. Have you done this? Now, if you set all types of passing records, aka Dan Fouts, who never ever got to a Super Bowl, yet he created an aura of the Air Coryell era. I think Eli eventually gets in. I think Eli gets in before Phillip Rivers gets in. Probably Eli gets in before Drew Brees gets in. But I mean, they're all great quarterbacks in their own light. Postseason success, though, does carry a little bit more clout than just great volume numbers that these other quarterbacks piled up.
Eli's definitely in, as far as I'm concerned. But I'll bet you that Breeze will go first amongst those three, then Manning, then Rivers, in that order. And then, granted, some of them might be inducted in the same year. But you know what's funny about Eli Manning is obviously him and his brother, you know, they're like geniuses. The amount of money and fame that they're generating, you know, just in endorsements and these ESPN sort of live calling of the games and everything. But it's interesting to me how Peyton Manning obviously is the character, kind of the type A personality, the attention seeker. And Eli Manning is just like a quiet, nerdy guy.
Goofy.
And kind of goofy. And yet he's getting endorsement deals on his own. I think he was doing like Jersey Mike's or something like that. And I'm like, okay, if you're going to have a Manning brother be your spokesman, you'd think you'd pick Peyton. But, you know, maybe Eli has a big following. I don't know.
It's just the personality. I don't think Eli's got a great personality.
He's
Peyton has developed personality. I mean, the marquee guy right now in Neon Lights, because you turn your TV on, he's on everywhere on my TV. Jason Kelsey. He's just amazing.
Well, I keep seeing Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah. Okay, let's keep going here. And this is an interesting comment from Mario. I'm trying to read between the lines. I think this is talking about the Dodgers and the bullpen with Kershaw and Sasaki. And Mario says, just because it worked against the Diamondbacks don't mean it will work, LOL.
Well, understand this. You can only use Kershaw one time. He's not going to pitch back-to-back days because his starter regimen won't allow it. Now, Sasaki did pitch back-to-back over the final 2 weeks of his rehab at Oklahoma City when they decided to take him out of the rotation, and they told him, we want you to go 1 inning, max effort, use your best stuff. His best stuff is 100-mile-an-hour fastball and the splitter. Just go 1 inning. And he did go back-to-back 2 different times of the 3 relief appearances he made. So if he's going to be a closer, maybe he's going to be the guy. I just don't know that you can trust Tanner Scott any longer. And all of a sudden, all these other guys are already on the disabled list right now. The wild card is the long reliever, Emmett Sheehan. If their starters get in trouble, then Emmett Sheehan might be a long reliever. But again, Emmett Sheehan is a starter. I don't think they're going to ask Emmett Sheehan to go back-to-back days either. There's a pitching regimen for starters. You've got to protect them, and you're not going to ask them to go back-to-back. So Sasaki, to me, more is going to be the potential to be a closer because I think he can go back-to-back days.
Yeah. I think so too. But, you know, Kershaw, he's not going to be a starter. I mean, even if it's a 7-game series, they've still got 4 other guys ahead of him. At least. So you think Kershaw, he's kind of doing the John Smoltz thing. You know, it's like, I'll be a bullpen guy. And that's like a cool way to kind of go out, you know, on his final year. But it was someone else here had a comment about Sasaki. And I think it was Casey. It says, good afternoon, guys. Hacksaw, I thought Roki Sasaki looked good last night for my Dodgers coming in to relieve. And what I think about him being a closer during postseason, possibly.
Yep. And again, just spin back to what I just said. He's got the ability, because he's already done it, being able to go 2 days in a row out of the pen, max effort, or you can't ask Kershaw to go 2 days in a row, and they probably would not ask Sheehan.
That's that. I agree with you. I think that makes sense.
You agree with me? What's wrong with you?
Yeah,
people look at you and say, "Why you're agreeing with him?"
Well, sometimes I agree with you. Okay, now this is a kind of an interesting question. I don't know if this is a challenge or a reveal or just a sincere question from David. What's the best food and drink at Snapdragon?
I don't know. The prices are so high. I've not bought any food at Snapdragon at all. They don't do much in the press box either. It's just
really,
it's kind of,
they don't wheel in some good grub. I mean, you guys are like their marketing fee.
No, they don't. Group. No, it's not at all. I just have a problem philosophically with everything from a price standpoint that they've done at Snapdragon from the minute they open the stadium. And that's why I think the community has a problem. That's why I think there's no support. And yeah, Aztecs for life may disagree with me, and that's okay if you're a San Diego State alum. But I just look at the gross attendance numbers, and they're just way off from what they should be for a Division I program, and that has not won recently either. But so I can't answer that question only because I don't go downstairs and I don't buy a lot of food, and I don't hardly eat anything in the press box because there's nothing there that's special to me outside. I mean, it's a sub sandwich. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. I can get a sub sandwich anywhere. That's okay.
It's an interesting question because I've been to 2 or 3 games, and every time I've eaten before I've gone in. You know, if it was either at a tailgate or we went out to some bar and restaurant prior to the game. But I remember when I was walking in, they had like behind glass, it looked like a really nice sort of like a bar environment, like an indoor, like something you'd see at Petco. And then I remember walking around the concourse, and of course you have your regular concession stands that sell hot dogs and, you know, beer and popcorn. But then they had a lot of like these independent people that had their own sort of trailer booth, like you would see at Peoria for the Padre games, that had a little bit more creative, I wouldn't say exotic, but maybe creative food.
Unique cuisine.
Yeah, exactly. And so some of those actually look pretty good. But the place that every time I've gone also, I've only had just regular seats. I want to go into that. There's like a deck over the end zone. It's like a plank, like you would see at a pirate ship or like a diving board or something. I want to go up there and watch the game. I think that looks like it'd be pretty fun because I know they serve beers up there.
Yeah, they did a press conference up there, and before they opened, they had us all come down, and they took us actually all over the stadium, which was kind of a cool trip. And then they took us to that end zone thing that you're making reference to, where you actually stood out at the edge of this bar, looking to the end zone, through the end zone, up the field. It was kind of neat.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, I really like that stadium. And the product on the field is improving, so there's hope.
We'll see what they do this weekend at Northern Illinois.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's go to social media, and as long as we're talking Aztecs, let's get this Aztec comment in here. This is from Brian. He goes, San Diego State obliterated Cal. Nice job, Aztecs. Cal should give up football and stick to rugby.
Well, Cal's coming back. That coach has done a really good job there, Justin Wilcox, and that was a setback for them because they had played really well the week before when they punctured Minnesota in a Big Ten game, but they really got ambushed, and that was game planning. That was the Aztecs defensive coaching staff coming up with a game plan of taking away things from that quarterback and making him stand in the pocket, go through his progressions, and then that kid Sagapatelli started throwing balls into coverage because he couldn't find the right guys. They took away the first option, and he was holding it, and there was pressure around him. They started throwing into double coverage. That's why they had the interceptions. The 10 pass deflections was phenomenal. But that was a game plan that worked against a freshman quarterback, a freshman who had hardly ever probably seen that stuff before. Now, they're going to go to Northern Illinois this weekend. I guarantee you this. That's it. DeKalb, Illinois is a tough place to play. And they're going to run the football until your eyes water and your nose bleeds. That's what Northern Illinois does. And so they're going to test the manhood of San Diego State's defensive front. But again, the Aztecs have strength in numbers on defense. The Aztecs are going to come after their Northern Illinois' very young quarterback. And they're going to commit a lot of guys at a line of scrimmage and say, if you think you can run the damn ball, well, here's a 7-man front, and we're going to blitz on running downs too. So that chess match is really going to be fun. Good. This Aztec defense is really good. It's really fast. It's really deep. I mean, they made that game against Cal a street fight, and they won it. So we'll see what they do here this week against Northern. If they could win this and come back at 3-1, because then they go into the conference, and I don't know how good this conference is right now. I'm not quite sure it's as deep as I thought it was going to be. They get in a conference, maybe they put a thing together. And all you need to know is Sean Lewis's history is flipping programs. By the middle of his second year at Kent State, that thing was starting to cook.
Okay.
So let's just see what happens in DeKalb. But they're going to test their manhood.
Well, didn't Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame?
Yes, a year ago.
So this isn't a cupcake at all.
They beat the crap out of them.
Yeah.
They ran the ball, and it was very impressive.
But I would imagine that the defensive coordinator for the Aztecs probably knows going in that they're going to put a double team on Trey White on the line. So you've got to figure out a scheme for all the other guys.
That's right.
Right. And to make that work. So I don't know. I'm surprised, by the way, that Cal wants anything to do with San Diego anymore. I mean, because remember that San Diego stinking state or whatever that
way
was?
Way
back. And then even UCSD had their first ever Division I basketball victory was over the Cal Golden Bears. I think when was it their first ever? Yeah, I think it was their first ever. So Cal should just quit coming to San Diego.
Well, I was shocked. And it was a question I meant to ask Sean Lewis, and it totally flipped out my mind. I was going to ask him at the press conference on Monday, because he's been in football his whole life. I said, all the games you've played and coached in, have you ever had a situation where you've been on the field for 19 plays, over 10 minutes, 75 yards, and the other guy didn't score? That's how well they played. And they got progressively better and better and better. And then it dawned on me, they're doing some things schematically against this freshman quarterback that Cal's got. And this kid didn't know where to go with the football because his number one option was taken away. And then you get hits on the quarterback, then you get sacks, then you're thrown into double coverage and you get pass deflections, then you get the turnovers. I mean, it was classic what they did with the game plan against that kid. But that's a one-time thing against a freshman quarterback.
Yeah, but still, it's something nice to build on. And, Sean Lewis is, he's getting a little bit of heat here in year 2. So wouldn't it be just a great story, if they became this Cinderella team, run the table in the Mountain West? I mean, stranger things have happened.
The best thing would be if they became a Cinderella team and this town responded, put its arms around this football program.
Oh, they will. If they win, they'll come.
Okay, we move on.
Okay, let's do some Clipper talk. And this is with Ronald. And talk about Kawhi. He said, don't suspend the guy we never get to see play anyway. Unfair to Zubac and everyone else. Just sentence Uncle to the firing squad. That seems more reasonable. Seriously, though, this really isn't the law. It's a CBA agreement violations, as far as I know. Suspend Harden for the playoffs would be okay.
He's talking about whether or not the league is going to take sanctions against Kawhi Leonard specifically if the salary cap investigation proves that they circumvented the rules. But the fact of the matter is, if indeed Kawhi's uncle and his agent asked for all these things and he knew it was a violation, they kept asking, and they wound up getting it, does he not bear some penalty for what he did in addition to what might be done to Ballmer, might be done to the Clippers? So this is a deep investigation. It's probably going to go into the middle of the season. We'll just find out as we go. But again, when we broke that story and broke down all the things in the CBA that they could do to Kawhi, that's based on the fact Kawhi created this because they kept asking. They found somebody to give it to him, which was the salary cap violation. So if you're going to nail the Clippers, don't you have to nail the player to a degree too?
Yeah, this is just weird. Like I said,
separate the fact you're a fan of who he was at San Diego. So let's just deal with this.
Yeah, but I am dealing with this. And in my opinion, that if Ballmer or someone else in the Clippers organization brokered an introduction to another company that could potentially endorse what Kawhi is doing, to me, I don't see that as being a problem. Now, the problem was the money. You follow the money, and the money went from the pockets of one of the associates of Steve Ballmer eventually into Kawhi's pocket. And that's clearly a violation. But my sense is, and I know like this much about it, but my sense is that the uncle has got to be a big part of the problem here.
Oh, he was at the end of the relationship in San Antonio. He definitely was in Toronto when they made demands and the Raptors said, these are violations. We're not doing this. And obviously the demands he made from Ballmer. And then we find out this sidebar deal that they made with this consortium company. Again, Kawhi benefits from it. Kawhi's part of this. So I think he's got to pay a penalty.
Yeah, he'll end up getting penalized in some way. But I don't know. This is going to be a fun trial to follow.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the input, Ron.
Okay, let's go Charger talk with Indelicious. He goes, don't be jumping on the Chargers train now, Lee.
Why not? I've been talking about Justin Herbert since the minute he got here from Oregon. That's the future of the franchise. Jumping on the train? No. I mean, I've been pretty critical of the makeup of their roster and their failures and their shortcomings, etc. But they're playing really well right now. And as long as they keep that quarterback upright and they keep those wide receivers, and they got a ton of guys in the back seven defensively. Why should I not tell you what I think? And I don't bury them just for the sake of burying them because they left here. I'll be critical of Spanoses for screwing this community. Somebody in the media needs to be critical of Team Spanos. But by the same token, I think Herbert's just a star. And I think that Joe Horwitz or Joe Ortiz, the new general manager, has put together back-to-back really impressive drafts. So it's not like I'm bandwagon. I just pay attention to what they do on a year-by-year basis, what they add, what they delete, what they lose, etc. So I don't know. Do I look like a bandwagon guy?
It's funny because they always judge you as a fan rather than as a professional journalist, that's writing about these teams and commenting about these teams. They think, secretly, you're underneath, your shirt, you're wearing Charger underwear or something.
No, I like the quarterback. I dislike the owner. That's me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the consensus. I think here it's funny because even in San Diego, I feel myself, and I know a lot of other San Diego Charger fans are kind of feeling they're getting sucked back in because it is a fun team to root for. They got the quarterback is a great story. You still love those Charger powder blues.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it's like you want to come back to the ex-girlfriend, but it's probably not a good relationship. So you just watch from afar.
Well, I watch from afar, pay attention, etc. But to say I'm jumping on the bandwagon late, no. Well, I've been reporting on it from the day they left, and that was 8 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. You never gave up. I'll give you credit. A lot of people gave you crap. Why are you still covering them? You said they're an NFL team in our reasonable proximity. Yeah. Why not?
And I cover the Rams extensively too, and I've never had any emotional attachment to anything in the NFC because I was an AFC guy as a longtime voice of the Chargers and the Seahawks at that point. They were in the AFC at that point, too.
So we already know that as a kid, you grew up on Long Island. You went to Dodgers, Giants, Yankees games, but you were an Indians fan.
And a Cleveland Browns fan.
That was my next question. Who your football team was?
Yeah, Cleveland Browns, Jim Brown. What a great era that was.
Okay. So that's who we might catch you homering for if we're going to catch you.
No, not now, but I mean, that's who I grew up homering for.
Right. Do you ever feel bitter that what the Baltimore Ravens became is what the Browns should have been?
Oh, I was sick. And I worked in Cleveland. I've been here since 1987. I was in Phoenix prior to that, but I worked in Cleveland for 7 years prior to going to Phoenix. It was like a boyhood dream moving to Cleveland to do sports talk, and I got hired to do hockey, and yet I was covering the Indians and working on the Browns network. I mean, it was so cool because that's who I grew up. I grew up as a fan of Chief Wahoo and the Cleveland Indians, and I grew up waiting to see Cleveland Browns, New York Giants football on black and white TV.
Living the dream.
Yeah, exactly. But I was heartbroken, and I had great respect for Art Modell. He was good to me. As a talk show host, but B, he was a great businessman in Cleveland. He did so many charitable things in Cleveland. He saved individually, John, he saved the Cleveland Clinic that was going into bankruptcy. Yes. And Art Modell was the creative genius that came up with the idea for Monday Night Football.
Oh, yeah.
In the Roselle era. But he was a bad businessman, and he did not have the bankroll, and he got in money trouble because he was signing free agents he couldn't pay for, and then the franchise fell apart, and then he made a mistake with the hiring of the young coach Belichick, and then he left in the middle of the night because he couldn't get a new stadium. But I was sick. I was sick that they moved the Cleveland Browns. By that time, I was the voice of the Chargers, and I used to get a rush going back to broadcast at Old Municipal Stadium against the Browns. But we went in there. We played on a Sunday in October, the week after the Browns announced they were going to Baltimore. And it was like going to a funeral. I'd never seen anything like it. Stadium was half empty. They were fans who came were enraged. All the sponsors had canceled their contracts when Modell announced, it was late October, we're moving to Baltimore because we cannot get a stadium built. The stadium was naked. They took all the signage, all the corporate signage was gone. The NFL now is all about neon and signs and there's a specialness to going to a game now with sponsorship. All that was gone. It was like going to a funeral. And we played in Cleveland there right after the days after they announced they were leaving. It was the strangest thing I ever felt.
Did the fan base have any sort of advance warning or even like spidey senses tingling? They kind of saw this coming.
No.
Because was it a battle for a new stadium? Isn't that usually what the
Well, they were
problem is?
trying to get a new stadium built because the city of Cleveland had already. I'm trying to think the time frame. They had built a new stadium for the Indians. It became Jacobs Field, became Progressive Field. They had built a new stadium for the Indians. They'd done nothing for Modell. And Modell had taken over Old Municipal Stadium when the city Cleveland went bankrupt. And he put himself in a place in the 70s to save Municipal Stadium, in addition to all the other civic things he was doing. But it drained him financially because it was an old stadium going back to the, 1930s.
You know what's funny is when I think of football games at the old stadium there, I just it's like the lighting is dark and the ground is muddy, and it's not like bright, sexy neon light kind of thing.
It's Cleveland. It's Lake Erie. The Mistake on the Lake.
Yeah.
It's gray. That's
exactly. So it's just, like, Brian Sipe or, the drive, with the Browns and the Broncos and all that. Yeah. It's just mud in that field.
But I like Modell. I was heartsick when they announced they were moving. I couldn't believe it. And then for us to go in, and I was talking to Jim Laslovic, my color analyst, this week, and we were just talking about memories. And we talked about that Cleveland situation. I said, the strangest feeling you'd ever have to go into this historic stadium that was always selling out and have it half empty and have all the signage gone off the scoreboard and all around the stadium. It was just really eerie. That's where we are. I'm not jumping on and off the bandwagon, just covering the stories the way they should be covered.
Okay. All right, let's go down the list here, and here's some Dodger talk, and this is going to be from GL Munoz. Just a little dramatically, the Dodgers will be the 3rd seed in the NL, so their season isn't burnt to the ground. The proven leadership in the Dodger organization will come up with a solution for the bullpen. Even in a down season, the Dodgers continue to outperform their little brothers in San Diego.
Oh, just feel free to spit on the guy down the I-5. Padres have played a lot of good baseball in the last 5 years. They just haven't not gotten to the World Series yet. Dodgers historically have always been a great franchise and have always drafted well. And are they the enemy? No, I don't think the enemy. I just think that they're a big market and they have done a fabulous, fabulous job. That being said, last year they saved themselves with bullpen days, and all of a sudden, now we'll see what next week brings. But all of a sudden now, here's Kershaw coming out of the bullpen. Sasaki's coming out of the bullpen, and both did well their first opportunities out of the bullpen. So let's just see what next week brings when the Dodgers have to play a best-of-3 at Dodger Stadium in a wild card round. So it's going to be fun.
Well, I think we all expected the Dodgers to win the division. I mean, nobody picked anybody other than the Dodgers, right?
But they kept giving it away.
Well, but I know. I mean, that's a problem. But I remember at the beginning of the year, you had the Diamondbacks 2 and the Padres 3, and obviously those two teams flip-flopped.
Well, because Arizona went into fire sale mode.
Yeah, and they had all those injuries and everything else. So the Dodgers are kind of, you thought maybe they would have been a 1 or a 2 seed. It didn't turn out that way. But the fact they won the division, Padres' little brother, yeah, I mean, that's just reality. As a Padre fan, I don't fight back on that because I know it's true, and it just makes the rivalry kind of fun. So one of these years, the Padres are going to get the Dodgers. Maybe is it this year? I think one of the UT writers was saying that if they meet, it won't be until the NLCS, the way that the brackets are lining up.
Could be. But at the end of the day, the Dodgers have won the division 12 times in 13 years. That's pretty dominant.
Yeah, but how many of those years did the Giants win the World Series coming out as a wild card? A couple of them, so we'll see.
But the Padre window is closing. That's the big issue to me. And all my friends in the media seem to ignore that reality that there is no farm system now, and they've traded it all away. And you have all these older players with contracts. This window is closing. I thought it had to be last year or this year or maybe next year at the latest.
AJ's got boots on the ground. He's scheming. He's working. They're going to restock. They don't rebuild. They, what's the word for that? They just kind of restart it. They kind of reload.
Okay, if you say so.
Okay.
I still think the window's closing. Hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed this podcast.